Alright, so here's a video on writing exponential equations, and what you're going to find today is that we're doing the same thing we did yesterday with linear, except it's a different type of function. So they're not going to be in y equals mx plus b form, they're going to be in the form for an exponential, because y equals mx plus b is for linear. So let's get started. First thing we've got here is some information about exponential equations, and the first thing I've given you is the form that they're in. Okay? So again, not y equals mx plus b because that is linear. What we're going to have to do is identify these two parts, the a and the b. Now the a part is our 0 point. Okay, so it corresponds, like I said, you're going to find that we're doing the same thing we did yesterday. We're going to look at a table, we're going to find the change, and we're going to find the 0 point and plug it in. The 0 point, though, here is this a value, and for y equals mx plus b, it's the b, so don't get confused because there's also a b in this one. Okay, so a is our 0 point. B is what we're doing each time. And what I mean by that is what we're multiplying by or what we're dividing by. Okay? Now, that idea of multiplication and division, that's what distinguishes this from linear. Linear is adding and subtracting. So, exponential, multiplication, and division. The multiplication and division tie over here to our two types. If it's growth, that means that we multiply in our table. And we're multiplying by a b value that's bigger than 1. So 2, 3, 4, 5, something like that. Decay means we're dividing. And this one's a little different. We can't write divide by 2 in for the b value, so the rule we have to follow is that our b value is between 0 and 1. So suppose we're dividing by 2. What that really corresponds to is multiplying by 1/2. We put a 1 in the numerator, and then what we're dividing by becomes our denominator. So if we're dividing by 3, it'd really be multiplying by 1/3. And then these values fit this rule of being between 0 and 1. Okay? Where I think we might struggle today is here with the decay. Growth, I think you guys are going to get. You'll be able to plug everything in. Decay, dividing, rewriting it as that fractions where I think we might have some trouble. Okay? I've got 3 examples for you. And here's the first one. What we want to do on this first one is analyze the table. See what information we have. Well, it looks like I start here at -2 and it's going down to 2. We're skipping by 1s in the x column, which is great. If I look, I do see that I have a 0 point, which is even better because that automatically tells me that this 1 is my a value. Perfect. Don't have to do any work to find it. Now, remember I told you, I don't think I said this actually, the 0 point is where we're going to start in our table where we're looking. I don't really want to look at these negatives because they might just confuse us. There's some fractions here. I don't really want to deal with fractions. So, what I want to look at, I want to start here at 0 and 1, and I want to figure out how I'm getting through this table, what I'm doing every time in the y column. So how did I get from 1 to 3, and then from 3 to 9? Well, some of you are going to be able to see it. If you can't see it, then you're going to use a calculator and you're going to guess and check. Do 1 times something, since this is a multiplication, and I know it's getting bigger, so that makes it multiplication. 1 times what gives me 3? Well, it's 3. And then check it for the next one. 3 times 3, well, that is 9, so it works. That tells me that this 3 is my b value, which makes sense because if it's growth, then my b value needs to be bigger than 1. Okay? So now that we've identified those, let's write it in our form. Y equals a times b to the x. Y equals, we said our a value was 1, and then our b value we found to be 3. And there is our problem. Okay? So again, same stuff we were doing with linear. We're just identifying different things, and we're working with multiplication and division. Let's look at our second example. All right, first thing I want to do is analyze this table. And when I analyze it, I see 2 things. First thing, I have a 0 point, which is my a value. It's great. So a is 100. Second thing I notice is that my table is getting smaller. Okay, this implies that I'm dividing, which means this is decay because decay is getting smaller. Now, remember I said when it's decay that b value needs to be between 0 and 1. And we can't write divides by whatever. We have to change that into a fraction. So we know we have to do that for this problem. See if we can figure out what that b value is. So how did I get from 100 to 50? Or 50 to 25? 25 to 12 and a half? Well, I could use my calculator, but really I'm dividing by 2. Okay? So again, we said I can't write divide by 2. I have to know that I have to switch that into a fraction, 1 over whatever I'm dividing by, 1/2. And then that meets this requirement where b is between 0 and 1. Okay, so now I have my a and my b. Let's write it in our form. And this one I'm going to write slightly differently just because there's a fraction. So 100 times 1/2, and I'm going to put the x on the outside. It's not a big deal if it's not, but this implies that that x goes to this whole 1/2 here. Sometimes when we write it like this, people get confused and think that exponent just goes with the top, with the numerator. So we put it on the outside to show that it's that whole thing. Okay, good. All right, last example here. First thing I want to do, analyze that table. When I look at that table, I notice two things. First thing, I have no 0 point. That means I'm going to have to find it. Second thing, see, is that I'm getting bigger in the y column here. The numbers are getting bigger. They're increasing. That tells me that this is growth and that my b value should be bigger than 1. Also tells me that I'm going to be multiplying. Okay? In order to find the 0 point, I have to figure out my b value first. So I have to do the b part first. So let's figure out what we're multiplying by. How did I get from 20 to 40, 40 to 80, 80 to 160? Some of you are going to see that it's multiplying by 2, but again, if you don't know, this is where you come in with a calculator, and you're going to do 20 times what gives you 40 until you figure it out. Again, that's times 2, so our b value is 2. Now, to find our 0 point, we have to add some stuff to our table here. We're starting at 2, and we have to jump up to 0. So we have to do 2 more values above the table. Okay, well, I want you to think about this. If I'm going down the table, and we said we're multiplying by 2, to go up the table, I have to do the opposite. So to get up from 2 to 1, I'm going to have to divide by 2. And 20 divided by 2 is 10. But that's not where we want to be yet because that's 110. I have to do it a second time in order to get to our 0 point, our a value. So what is 10 divided by 2? Well, it is 5. So then 5 is our a value. We say y equals a times b to the x. So y equals, we found that a value to be 5, and our b value was 2 to the x. So there we go. That is our problem, and we're good to go. Now, your homework on Schoology, same idea. I'm going to give you a table. You're going to identify a and b, decide whether it's growth or decay, and find it if you need to. Some will have 0 points in them, some won't. So you might have to do a little bit of work. But finding the b value could be guess and check if you need a calculator, or they're not going to be crazy problems, maybe up to 5 that you're going to be multiplying by, maybe 6, okay, but nothing like multiplying by 52 or multiplying by 301. Something like that's going to be too difficult for you to just recognize right off the bat. So hopefully you'll be able to recognize it, but if not, you've got a calculator to help you. If you have any questions, please let me know. Otherwise, good luck on your homework, and I will see you later.